Okay, now that I'm all settled, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for being here to focus on the continuing attacks by the Trump regime. And I call it a regime because of its authoritarianism, but they're continuing attacks on education, and this time minority-serving institutions, a subject that all of our panel members are very familiar with. So as I mentioned, this regime has been hell-bent on eliminating support for programs that promote diversity, equity, or inclusion in any form. In our schools, in the administration, I think you are well aware of their attacks on what we would refer to as DEI, but basically it's diversity. So following the plan and Project 2025, Trump has been targeting these programs under the false pretense of addressing, quote, discrimination. From threatening investigations to withholding funds, he has been attacking these programs and is now working to illegally eliminate the programs entirely, not to mention they would like to eliminate the entire Federal Department of Education, starting with firing half of the staff, being challenged legally. Of course, during this forum, we'll hear from students, faculty, administrators, and others about the threats this regime poses to students. There are about 5 million students who are helped by minority-serving institutions, 5 million. So that we can empower our communities to fight back. Within days of taking office, Trump issued executive orders to limit the ability of states, school districts, colleges, and universities, and others to ensure equal access to education. In July, he decided not to defend from legal challenges programs that promote equal access to education. Normally, when programs that are supported by Congress and enacted into law, if there are legal challenges, the administration, through the Attorney General's office, defends these programs, but not in this instance. So we're sort of left to our own devices, and that is why it is really important for the American public to know through forums like this, and this is the 5th education forum that I am conducting, that through forums like this, they are aware of the challenges to our public schools. And then in September, he announced that he would reprogram $350 million in funding for these programs, $350 million. These are programs that support over 5 million students in over 800 institutions across the country. And I just want to note that when I say across the country, blue states and red states have, hold on, I need a list. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that there are MSIs throughout the country. For example, Texas has 174 institutions, minority granting institutions, that service 2.2 million students. Florida has 55 MSIs that serve 878,000 students. So I just want everyone to understand, as I know that our panelists do, that these minority-serving institutions are across the country. That is why there are 5 million students who would be impacted by this regime's attacks on MSIs. So he wants to reprogram all the funding that Congress appropriated for these institutions. But let's be clear, Congress created these programs and funded them for years because Congress recognizes the importance of these programs. And only Congress can eliminate these programs, and Congress has decided not to do so. In fact, we provided additional funding for these programs in the fiscal year 26 spending bill, reiterating our support for them. But of course, the Trump regime doesn't care about Congress's priorities. He and Linda McMahon, Secretary of Education, are doing everything they can to cut programs at the Department of Education without any regard, frankly, to the negative impacts of these efforts on their part. And so all students, regardless of their background, deserve access to a call to education. And without this funding, students from diverse backgrounds will lose critical support that they rely on. And frankly, I know whereof we speak because I attended a minority granting institution at the University of Hawaii. I participated in the work-study program to help pay for my education. I am an immigrant, so for on very many levels, I understand the importance of these programs to students like me that have the kind of background that I have, which is an immigrant with not very many financial resources. So that's why it's important for us to have this forum once again, and I certainly look forward to hearing from all of our witnesses. And I'm going to introduce each of you very briefly. I know you all have just very impressive credentials, but I'll just introduce you briefly. We'll start with from my left to my right, John Keenan. Mr. John Keenan is the president of Salem State University in Massachusetts. He is also a board member of the Government Affairs Committee for the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, which represents 500 colleges and universities committed to success of Hispanic students throughout the United States and overseas. And during President Keenan's tenure, Salem State became the first federally recognized Hispanic serving institution in Massachusetts. Welcome. Next, we have Dr. Rowena Tomaneng. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Oh, okay, sorry.
Yes.
So Dr. Tomaneng is the president of Asian Pacific Americans in Higher Education, a national organization advocating for Asian American and Pacific Islander students, faculty, and staff in higher education. She also serves as the Deputy Chancellor of the Chief Executive Offices of the California Community Colleges. Welcome. Next, we have Mike Nguyen. Dr. Mike Nguyen is an associate professor at the University of California, Los Angeles, and the principal investigator for the university's MSI data project, which traces the impact of, minority serving institutions on post-secondary education and minority students. I'm particularly interested in what happens to the students who have this exposure and support in their undergraduate situation and then going forward. So he also serves on the board of directors for the Southeast Asians Action Center, a national organization advocating for Southeast Asian American communities. Then we have Joanne Pano. Okay, there you are. Okay, Ms. Pano is the policy director for the National Council of Asian Pacific Americans, a national coalition of 46 organizations advocating for Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, including the students. So previously, she served as an adjunct professor at California State University, Dominguez Hills, a minority-serving institution. Next, Julian Holland. Mr. Holland is the Director of Government Affairs and Community Engagement for the Chicago State University. Today, he joins us in his capacity as a member of the National Coalition of Predominantly Black Institutions, which represents nearly 24 colleges and universities in 13 states advocating for predominantly Black institutions. Welcome to each of you. Thank you so much for participating and bringing your expertise to the subject. And I'm going to start by calling on Mr. Keenan. Please proceed.
Good morning, Senator. Thank you for having us here this morning. As president of Salem State University and a proud member of our group, I'm pleased to testify on an important topic for our campus and increasingly growing number of students in Massachusetts. Salem State is one of the largest and most diverse state universities, serving 11 of 26 gateway communities in the Commonwealth. Like me, 50% of our students are first generation to college, 40% are Pell eligible, and 40% identify as students of color, with 28% of our undergraduate students identifying as Hispanic. We remain fully committed to the belief that everyone deserves a chance to achieve social and economic mobility through higher education, particularly those who face initial barriers to opportunity. It is no secret that the demographic trends for the Commonwealth and for the country show Hispanic and minority populations on the rise, while other populations are in decline. We know that we must constantly assess and adapt to assets and needs of students and provide the resources that will allow them to thrive. For our Hispanic students, opportunity gaps exist in college and access and completion. While we have made tremendous progress in closing educational equity gaps for students of color over the last 30 years, gaps still remain. Hispanic students now make up 1 out of 4 students in the Massachusetts public K-12 system. These educational gaps not only impact Hispanic students and their families, but will also impact the Commonwealth's workforce and economy. Through assessment, investment, strategic planning, and data-informed decisions, college and universities can increase educational outcomes for all of our students, including Hispanic students with regard to access, enrollment, retention, and completion. For many institutions, these efforts evolve over time as their student body population evolve and require additional resources for the support of this transformation. With over 25% of students identifying as Hispanic, we meet the criteria for federal designation. We intend to apply, should the application become available again, to be the first 4-year public Hispanic serving institution in Massachusetts. We have prepared for this milestone for several years and created a roadmap to serving this to meet the needs of these and all of Salem State students. Our community is proud of our HSI identity and our student population and our focus on serving this for all students. As you mentioned, the U.S. Department of Education has questioned the constitutionality of HSI programs and has reallocated or frozen most of the HSI funding. While we have not been impacted financially by these changes to date, we were intending to apply for designation, and if successful, we would have competed for approximately $8 million in federal Title V and Title III grants that could have been dispersed over the next 5 academic years to build capacity to serve all of our students. Once a campus receives the HSI designation, they can also compete for HSI grant funding from other federal agencies, such as the National Science Foundation and USDA. With the reallocation of HSI funds, our inability to apply for designation, the current outlook to secure these funds is bleak. Federal grant funds would enable Salem State to increase student outcomes, meet workforce needs, and increase social mobility. Grant-funded programs would increase academic coaching, advising, tutoring, to increase student success and reduce the time to completion. In addition, funds would be used to increase access to high-impact practices like internships, civic engagement, and career preparedness, as well as increased professional development for faculty to support innovation and update academic offerings. According to HAKU, HSI serve approximately 5.6 million college students, a vibrant population that is truly a microcosm of America. While nearly 2/3 of the country's 4 million Hispanic college students attend HSIs, these institutions also serve substantial numbers of African American, Native American, and Asian American and other students, including many non-Hispanic white students. These institutions not only engines of educational opportunity and prosperity, they are the very foundation of America's 21st century workforce. Salem State has become an HSI leader in New England, and we are not alone in our efforts to serve this growing population. New England has 20 HSIs and another 39 emerging HSIs, which means they have 15 to 24% student body identifying as Hispanic. Massachusetts alone hosts 11 HSIs and 24 EHSIs. The 3 additional campuses in Massachusetts joining Salem State are Framingham State, Fitchburg State, and Worcester State will soon all reach the 25% threshold. We know the number of HSIs will continue to grow in the Commonwealth and New England. It serves us all for these students and institutions to be valued and adequately resourced. Massachusetts is the proud home where Horace Mann began the public education revolution. His words still ring true today, perhaps even more so than ever. Education is the great equalizer, the balance wheel of social machinery. Continued support of HSIs is essential to ensure that all students have equal opportunity for success, breaking the cycle of poverty, and fostering stable, democratic society. Without educated Hispanic students, our country will not be able to compete on a global scale or meet the workforce needs. We appreciate your attention to providing every student an opportunity to succeed, and certainly happy to answer any questions you may have. But thank you so much for your leadership, Senator.
Thank you very much. Now we'll go to Ms. Pano.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you, Senator Hirono, for the invitation to speak today, and I'd like to extend my gratitude to your staff for the opportunity to highlight the value and impact of MSI programs, specifically Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institutions. My name is Joanne Pano. I'm the Policy Director on staff within CAPA. We are the National Council of Asian Pacific Americans, a national coalition of 46 Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander organizations across the country with a collective reach throughout our state and local affiliates in the matter of 700 and over. We strive for equity at justice and in CAPA, and this means organizing our community's diverse strengths to build upon public narratives and shape public policy. We believe in the racial justice movement, and to be part of it means advancing our communities and the country towards a common purpose of shared progress, prosperity, and well-being for all. For the past 30 years, NCAPA has advocated and become a leading voice here in Washington, D.C. for our communities at large. And we've advocated on behalf of and alongside ANAPZs and ANHPI students to ensure that college affordability remains accessible for students and their families, and educational institutions continue to forge and cultivate environments of belonging. MSIs, such as ANAPZs, are integral to the backbone of the higher education system, ensuring that first-generation, immigrant, and multilingual students from families with low income have the opportunity to succeed and thrive no matter where they're from or what their zip code might be. As a policy advocate and former educator, having also attended an MSI myself, this issue does hit close to home. And so today I want to highlight 3 main points, starting with the most recent data on ANHPI students, the targeting of MSIs, including ANAPZs, and student stories from what we've learned in our work. So starting with data, oftentimes our students are obscured and hidden and ignored because of the lack of disaggregation available in government systems. Without disaggregated data by race and ethnicity, targeted support such as culturally responsive programming remains a missed opportunity, and educational disparities persist. Thanks to the relentless work of researchers and advocates such as our coalition partners at AAPI Data and APAHI, we now know the following. More broadly speaking, over 1.6 million Asian Americans and over 41,000 Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders have less than a high school degree. That's almost 1 in 8 ANHPIs. Among Asian Americans, the highest proportion of those with the lowest levels of educational attainment include Bhutanese, Burmese, Mien, and Cambodians. Among Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, the highest proportion of those with the lowest levels of educational attainment include Marshallese. There are over 380,000 Asian American and 40,000 Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander first-year undergraduate students who report ever taking remedial courses. That's 3 in 10 ANHPI first-year undergrad students. And in meeting the needs of students, we know that ANAPZs enroll over 40% of all ANHPI undergrads across the nation. So when we consider polling and data, we also know that 74% of ANHPIs believe that protecting high-quality public education as a pathway to economic opportunity is a priority. Our communities also strongly believe that an education is essential or important for obtaining a job that can comfortably support a family and being an informed and engaged citizen. APIs are also extremely and very concerned about the increases in student loan debt. And so these numbers are important to highlight because they do paint a broader picture for all of us to see, and that there is a need for the presence and reach of ANAPZs to address and respond to systemic disparities and opportunity gaps. Which brings me to my next point, the targeting of MSIs. As you shared, Senator, MSIs serve about 5 million students overall. And despite their value and impact since they were established, MSIs have been targeted for merely leveling the playing field and ensuring that equal opportunities are provided to students. The targeting of MSIs, such as ANAPZs, has consisted of the refusal to spend federal dollars, such as the reprogramming of $350 million in discretionary grants. This means less resources for outreach to students, mental health supports, academic tutoring, career counseling, wraparound supports, wellness workshops, effective local partnerships between local community-based organizations and high schools, connecting students to financial aid supports, summer bridge programs, pipelines to graduation, and so much more. Students and families will also bear the brunt. We know that the Reconciliation Bill of 2025 is resulting in a complete overhaul of federal education policies and programs. And because of the bill, modified eligibility requirements will take place impacting Pell Grants. Work requirements and stricter exemptions to SNAP may threaten vital safety net supports for students. Studies show that about 1.1 million college students rely on SNAP. And for context, the U.S. Government Accountability Office found that MSIs generally enrolled a larger share of students facing food insecurity in comparison to colleges who aren't considered as MSIs. We cannot close equity gaps in higher education by closing down the very same supports and resources that students need. There are so many stories about how impactful ANAPESIs are and how they make a difference, and so I'd just like to briefly highlight some of those with you today. Based on past site visits that I've had myself, going to Sacramento and Honolulu, I learned that ANAPESIs are a place of safety and belonging, where students feel like they are seen and they are heard and they are welcomed. I've listened to educators who shared about the impact of career training programs and how participating in those programs changed the trajectory of not only the lives of those students, but of their families as well. I also heard about instances where outreach to students consisted of making sure that food resources were available to students and their families who are facing food insecurity. And I've learned about the impact that ANAPESI pipeline programs have had as a bridge between schools within the US-affiliated Pacific Islands and here on the mainland, having heard from partners across the Pacific. Lastly, I want to point out the impacts that these institutions have on students themselves. And in a moment, I know you'll hear from incredible student leaders, so I'll keep this brief. But I did want to share, based on our work, every year NCAPA does work with our coalition partners to celebrate the value and impact of ANAPESIs. And so students have shared with us, I quote, "My doctoral degree shattered the ceiling of significance in higher education for my family. I am the first in my family to hold a high school diploma, as well as a bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degree. Being at an ANAPESI provided me with a supportive and culturally responsive environment that celebrated my identity and heritage, allowing me to thrive academically and personally." So again, just a few short but very powerful words that speak to the depth and the breadth and impact of ANAPESIs. Thank you so much, Senator. I look forward to our continued work together, and I look forward to answering any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Ms. Tomaneng?
Good morning, Senator Hirono, and thank you for convening this Spotlight Forum to examine the vital role minority-serving institutions play in advancing access, equity, and economic mobility in higher education. It's an honor to be here today. My name again is Dr. Rowena Tomaneng, President of Asian Pacific Americans in Higher Education, a network of practitioners and researchers from 175 colleges and universities, including 100 eligible ANAPESIs. I also serve as Deputy Chancellor for the California Community Colleges, the nation's largest higher education system, serving 2.2 million students across 116 colleges, including 99 Hispanic-serving institutions and 49 ANAPESIs. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of APAHI, which has long provided technical assistance to eligible and funded ANAPESIs. What has been the impact of ANAPESI funding since 2007? ANAPESI serves significant numbers of students from disaggregated AA and NHPI populations who experience substantial educational and economic disparities masked by aggregate data. Many Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and Southeast Asian American students are first-generation, low-income, or face linguistic and cultural barriers. Several of these subgroups have among the lowest college completion rates in the nation. Targeted federal support enables ANAPESIs to close these gaps by providing culturally responsive academic programs that strengthen belonging, retention, and graduation, student services including advising, financial aid guidance, counseling, and mental health supports, language access and mentorship to help students navigate complex systems, community partnerships that connect campuses with local AA and NHPI communities, and research initiatives that advance persistence, degree completion, and workforce readiness. The results are measurable. Ogden College in Illinois has served more than 3,500 students while increasing retention and completion among AA and NHPI degree-seeking students, including in STEM. New York's Hunter College's ANAPESI participants achieved a 98.3% first-year retention rate and a 76.1% six-year graduation rate, both higher than their peers. Northern Marianas College's Project PROA has served over 10,000 students, 76 first-generation and 84% Pell eligible, strengthening workforce and transfer pathways. And in California, Irvine Valley College's Elevate AAPI program maintains an 88% persistent rate, far above the campus average. These outcomes demonstrate that investment in ANAPESIs strengthens not only individual students, but also our nation's workforce and economic competitiveness. What are the consequences of the defunding? As a result of the September 10th Department of Education elimination and reprogramming of $350 million in discretionary funding, essential programs nationwide have been shuttered or destabilized. Institutions have reported to APAHI severe consequences. Cosumnes River College in California would lose academic and financial aid services supporting over 4,300 AA and NHPI students. Palau Community College would scale back tutoring, supplemental instruction, and career counseling. San Francisco State University would eliminate services for over 1,800 transfer students, widening equity gaps. Hunter College, New York, and North Seattle in Washington would end faculty development programs that equip our educators to support diverse learners. In short, defunding ANAPISIs does not simply reduce federal spending, it dismantles proven infrastructures that advance retention, completion, and workforce preparation. These programs are not supplemental, they are essential to closing equity gaps for first-generation and low-income students. Their loss will reverse hard-won gains, widen disparities, and weaken institutions that serve as gateways to opportunity. Restoring and protecting ANAPISI funding and other MSI funding is therefore not optional. It is a necessary investment in educational equity, institutional stability, and the nation's long-term economic and civic strength. Thank you again, Senator Hirono, and to our fellow senators for championing MSI programs and defending educational access, opportunity, and success. APAHI looks forward to continuing to partner with you in your efforts.
Thank you. Dr. Nguyen?
Good morning, Senator.
Morning.
Thank you for holding this spotlight forum to discuss the critical role of minority-serving institutions in American higher education and the devastating impact of the current administration's recent actions. It's an honor to testify before you today. My name is Mike Huang Nguyen. I'm an associate professor of education and the principal investigator of the Minority-Serving Institutions Data Project at the University of California, Los Angeles. I also serve on the board of directors for APAHI, as well as Southeast Asia Resource Action Center, CRAC. It's also important for me to note that my title is for identification purposes only. I'm not here speaking on behalf of UCLA, but instead speaking as a scholar who researches MSIs and their impact. MSIs are the backbone of American higher education. They provide critical pathways to academic opportunity and achievement for millions of students of color, particularly those from low-income households and those who are often the first in their families to go to college. Over the past 4 decades, Congress established 11 unique MSI designations, which include Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian serving institutions, Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander serving institutions, ANAPISI, Hispanic serving institutions, HSI, HSI STEM, historically black colleges and universities, HBCU graduate institutions, HBCU master's institutions, Native American serving non-tribal institutions, NASANTIs, predominantly black institutions, promoting post-baccalaureate opportunities for Hispanic Americans, POA, and tribally controlled colleges and universities. While these designations are primarily housed and administered by the U.S. Department of Education, many other federal agencies, including NASA, National Science Foundation, National Endowment for the Humanities, just to name a few, also provide grants and critical resources for MSIs, or at least they used to. MSIs are geographically diverse, located across every state, nearly every state, and in the Caribbean and in the Pacific, including Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, American Samoa, Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, Micronesia, Marshall Islands, and Palau. 1 in 5 higher education institutions is eligible to receive funding as an MSI, yet they enroll more than half of all undergraduate students of color. Often operating with significantly fewer resources than their peers, MSIs continue to serve as the most accessible and affordable pathways to higher education for our nation's diverse student populations. It's important to acknowledge that long before Congress established these designations, many of these colleges and universities enrolled and supported the educational advancement of students of color in both formal and informal ways. However, when Congress officially established these 11 designations, it not only signaled a real and tangible federal commitment to serving and supporting our students, it also provided much-needed resources to these often under-resourced institutions. Today, that commitment is more important than ever. Given the outsized role MSIs play in expanding educational access and opportunity, coupled with new challenges arising from recent targeted executive actions, I'm grateful to you for increasing the focus and attention on how MSIs can serve their students. I'm thankful for the opportunity to highlight some of the research that demonstrates the many positive outcomes they generate and to ensure that MSIs continue to receive the necessary federal resources to do this vital work. Empirical research demonstrates that MSIs account for some of the largest enrollments, degree completions, and positive labor market outcomes in the country. Indeed, MSIs enroll over 5 million students and achieve these outcomes because they are true sites of innovation. The federal funding appropriated to them directly enhances their ability to implement vital interventions to improve academic and student support services, deliver culturally relevant co-curricular programming, and expand their research capacity. And they do so in ways that embrace the students' identities, lived experiences, as well as their own families and communities. This only heightens the students' academic and professional trajectories, and it also increases their sense of belonging, identity development, and civic engagement, all of which in turn have profound positive effects on personal growth, key academic outcomes such as college retention, persistence, community college transfer, and completion. Specifically, research has shown that funded MSIs provide greater outcomes compared to institutions that are eligible MSIs, and that both funded and eligible MSIs provide greater outcomes than non-MSIs. The difference in graduation rates is staggering and unmatched. For example, Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian serving institutions award 12 times the average number of bachelor's degrees to Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students compared to non-HSIs. That's 12 times. MSIs overwhelmingly serve and benefit low-income students. When we analyzed graduation rates among Pell Grant recipients, it was evident that funded MSIs consistently outperformed their eligible counterparts in terms of graduation outcomes. The pattern of higher success rates for low-income students is ubiquitous among the majority of enrollment-based MSIs. These outcomes underscore the critical role that they play in fostering educational equity, particularly for low-income students. In terms of labor market outcomes, graduates of funded MSIs tend to have comparable or even higher average earnings relative to those from eligible MSIs, and they earn over 50% more than individuals without a college education. These data points only begin to scratch the surface of how MSIs benefit their students and their communities. During catastrophic natural disasters, federal funding for ANAPESES has been a lifeline for rebuilding infrastructure and programs. For example, in 2018, Super Typhoon Yutu devastated the Northern Mariana Islands. With winds topping 200 miles an hour, 80% of the campus was destroyed. As the community rallied to rebuild their campus, ANAPESE funds were there to support them. And just last year, they celebrated the ribbon cutting of a brand new 40,000 square foot student union that now provides modern classrooms, dedicated study spaces, and so many other critical student support services. Their resilience to recover and rebuild was fueled by federal commitments to their efforts. The impact of these institutions is even more astounding when you consider this. Their outsized contribution to educational outcomes and economic mobility are achieved while operating at a fraction of the resources of their counterparts. Their effectiveness underscores an urgent need for substantial increases in funding and not cuts, especially as they are responsible for expanding access to post-secondary education for so many students. These federal investments enhance educational equity, bolster institutional capacity, and drive true social and economic mobility. Yet recent executive actions have abruptly slashed hundreds of millions in funding from MSIs, driven by a legally flawed Department of Justice opinion. DOJ wrongly and perhaps intentionally conflated the Supreme Court's ruling on race-conscious admissions with MSI's enrollment-based eligibility. Admissions and enrollment are two very distinct concepts, and in fact, the overwhelming majority of MSIs are open access and broad access institutions. That is, they admit everyone or nearly everyone, and that applies. Unilaterally stripping away these funds based on a flawed legal theory is not wrong. It sets a deeply dangerous precedent. And the reality on campus has been devastating to our students. The sudden reprogramming of these funds have left MSIs struggling to figure out how to explain the continuity of vital services that have been empirically demonstrated to improve student learning, boost academic performance in the classroom, and ultimately lead them to graduate. And at the end of the day, let's be clear. Cutting MSI funding just doesn't hurt institutions. It hurts the students, most of whom are first generation and come from low-income households. These funds are about providing the basic resources so students can learn, grow, succeed, and contribute to our society and our economy. And eliminating these resources in general and in such an abrupt manner isn't just misaligned and misguided, it's plainly cruel. However, the bipartisan support MSIs have historically received is a testament to their value. Given their proven outcomes, Congress has an opportunity to do more to support these institutions. This, of course, includes substantially increasing their funding and building additional statutory safeguards to protect them from executive action that blatantly ignores congressional intent. I know the MSI community is greatly appreciative of the letter you and your colleagues sent to the Secretary of Education last week. We're grateful for your leadership and look forward to working with you in defense of educational access and opportunity. This is because the success of MSIs is not a matter of equity, it's a matter of profound national interest. Investing in MSI yields exponential returns. They are engines of economic growth, drivers of social mobility, and ladders of opportunity for millions of students and their communities. And as more colleges and universities become MSIs, it's incumbent upon all of us to strengthen these institutions for future generations of students. By bolstering support for MSIs, they can ensure that they continue to expand access, elevate outcomes, and transform the lives of our students. Thank you so much again, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. Before we get to Mr. Holland, the votes have been called, so I am going to step out momentarily to vote. But in the meantime, I'd like to show some virtual. There's some videos that some students put together for us. Ms. Lourdes Rosado, she is. Hold on for a minute. She is the president and general counsel for Latin Justice. And I think that is a group that has stepped up to defend the funding, continued funding for MSIs. And then we have Dr. Louis Hokanda. He is the interim vice president for the University of Hawaii Community Colleges and chancellor for the University of Hawaii Maui College. So we'll show those videos behind me, and then I'll be right back, and then we'll hear from Mr. Holland. Okay, let's go.
Good afternoon, Senator Mazie Hirono and members. Thank you for your leadership in convening this hearing and for your long-standing commitment to equity in higher education. My name is Lourdes Rosado, and I have the privilege of serving as President and General Counsel of Latino Justice PearlDeaf. Latino Justice PearlDeaf is a national civil rights organization dedicated to combating discrimination through litigation, advocacy, and education. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today about the importance of preserving support for a program that helps educate more than 5.6 million students nationwide in the 615 participating Hispanic serving institutions, or HSIs. Latino Justice PearlDeaf, alongside the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, known as HACU, is defending the HSI program in federal court because of the program's vital importance for so many students across the country. This lawsuit threatens programs that Congress created to address persistent inequities, and HACU's intervention is essential because the U.S. Department of Education has declined to defend the program. Hispanic serving institutions, or HSIs, are not new or partisan. They were created by Congress in 1992 with bipartisan support, and Congress has consistently reaffirmed their value through funding under Titles 3 and 5 of the Higher Education Act. These programs support student success, they build capacity and infrastructure, and they strengthen the workforce. In fiscal year 2026, Congress reaffirmed its support by allocating $231.6 million for HSIs and another $27.78 million to expand postgraduate opportunities. In doing so, Congress made it clear that they review these programs as vital and necessary and that they should continue as intended. Now, it's really important to dismiss persistent misinformation around HSIs. First, HSI funding is awarded to institutions, not to individual students. These institutions do not select students based on their race, and qualifying for these grants is in part based on already existing student populations. Institutions that receive the grants must apply, they meet several requirements, and compete for the grants. These grants are not guaranteed, and once awarded, the funds benefit the entire campus community. Now, we are encouraged by the recent letter from 30 U.S. senators reaffirming Congress's authority and opposing the administration's unilateral halt of minority-serving institution funding. As Congress turns to the next budget, we urge lawmakers to restore the $350 million in funds and to include strong oversight. Defending HSIs is about more than higher education. It is about our collective commitment to equity and to opportunity. Haku and Latino Justice are ready to fight to preserve the HSI program and to defend the principle that equity-based policy is both lawful and necessary. Now, we hope you will join us in that effort. Thank you.
Aloha, Senator Hirono. Aloha kako. Mahalo for the opportunity to speak about the Title III Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian serving programs. My name is Louis Hokoana. I serve as Chancellor of the University of Hawaii Maui College and Interim Vice President for the University of Hawaii Community Colleges. The University of Hawaii is our state's sole public higher education system. We comprise 10 campuses across our islands, a Research One institution at Manoa, 2 comprehensive baccalaureate colleges at Hilo and West Oahu, and 7 community colleges. Together, we serve students in every county. We are Hawaii's primary workforce development engine. A critical foundation of that work is federal investment through Title III Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian Serving Institution grants. Every one of our campuses currently receives Title III funding. These grants are not supplemental, they are transformational. Title III strengthens institutional capacity, it expands advising and student support services, it modernizes academic programs, and it closes equity gaps for Native Hawaiian students. Native Hawaiians represent approximately 12,000 students across our system. Title III allows us to provide culturally grounded education that improves persistence, graduation, and career outcomes. On our neighbor islands, these funds are essential to sustaining access and opportunity. Let me share one example. At Maui College, Title III funding helped launch our CNA to LPN Glide pathway. This program allows students who are working as certified nurse assistants to seamlessly advance to licensed practical nurse licensure. It is a stackable credential model. It addresses rural healthcare shortages. It creates upward mobility for working adults. It strengthens family economic stability, and it expands Maui's healthcare workforce. Since its launch, this pathway has produced more than 150 licensed practical nurses across Hawaii, including in the rural community of Molokai. One student had worked as a CNA for 15 years. Through this pathway, he earned his LPN credential. His wages doubled, and his employer retained a skilled, committed healthcare professional. That is a direct return on the federal investment, meeting urgent workforce needs while advancing educational attainment. The University of Hawaii also serves as a backbone institution in times of crises. Following the 2023 Maui wildfires, UH deployed students from our Laukanaka program, grounded in Lomi Lomi and Ho'opono, to provide culturally grounded healing support to those impacted. That rapid response was possible because of the institutional capacity built over years through Native Hawaiian serving initiatives supported by Title III. Today, behavioral health providers in Maui are adopting this model, and caseworkers are being trained in Ho'opono. That is institutional transformation. Our work is guided by the University of Hawaii's Native Hawaiian imperative to fulfill our kuleana to Native Hawaiians and to Hawaii. This imperative is not symbolic, it is operational. It ensures that Native Hawaiian students' success is central to our mission and measurable in our outcomes. We are proud of our progress, but we are also clear-eyed about what remains. Before COVID-19, Native Hawaiian graduation rates reached historic highs. Today, it has not yet returned to pre-pandemic levels. Equity work is not finished, and the progress we have made is not guaranteed without sustained partnership. Continued and strengthened support for Title III Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian serving institutions, for workforce development initiatives, and for rural campus capacity. It is not simply an investment in higher education. It is an investment in Hawaii's healthcare workforce, and economic mobility for working families, in rural community stability, and in the preservation and advancement of indigenous knowledge systems that strengthen our entire state and country. The University of Hawaii is more than a higher education system. We are where opportunities begin, where resilience is built, and where the federal government's partnership is translated into measurable outcomes for our communities. Your support does not fund programs, it fuels transformation. And for thousands of Native Hawaiian students and for the communities they will serve, it changes what is possible. Mahalo for including Title III funding in the budget, and for your leadership, your partnership, and your continued commitment to the Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian Serving Institution Program. Aloha.
Thank you very much. We wanted to have these videos to show that these programs are nationwide and the impacts are nationwide, and to hear from the two virtual witnesses, I think is important. And as we proceed, we will also hear from two students who are in the room who will share their experiences a bit later. So right now, I'd like to hear from Mr. Holland.
Hello, and good afternoon.
Hello, aloha.
Hola. So I would like to thank you first, Senator Hirono, for convening this important conversation. My name is Julian Holland. I'm a member of the National Coalition of Predominantly Black Institutions, and as you mentioned earlier, also on staff at Chicago State University. Excuse me. Our coalition of over 23 PBIs across the country is excited to be represented here today. And today I'm here to represent two themes. So first would be the outsized impact of predominantly Black institutions and our work across our regional economies, and the benefit of federal funding for minority serving institutions and what that does for all students on our campus. First, who are PBIs? So PBIs are not just a descriptor for a school with a lot of Black students, nor are they the same as historically Black colleges and universities. The federal designation was created under the 2008 Higher Education Act with bipartisan support at that time. PBIs are community colleges and universities that have at least 1,000 undergraduate students, 40% of whom are African American, 50% of who are first generation or come from low income backgrounds. And there are over 60 PBIs across 19 states that educate nearly 308,000 students across America. Of those 308,000 students, approximately 50% are African American, about 11% are Hispanic, and over 50% receive the Pell Grant. In short, PBIs are community anchors that drive workforce and economic development in our states and regions, and that is a really strong first point that I want to establish here today. Secondly, why does federal funding matter to PBIs and our students? PBIs have historically received funding under two programs with the funding that supports all students on our campuses. The first, formula grants, assist PBIs in expanding and enhancing educational programs. The second program, the competitive grants, support establishing or strengthening programs in areas including STEM, health sciences, teacher preparation, and so on. These programs do not discriminate against non-Black students on our campuses. Federal funds are applied across the spectrum of students that attend our institutions, as is the case for my colleagues to my right. Take, for instance, Chicago State University. Chicago State is Illinois' only four-year PBI, and we're also in the top 4% in the nation among all colleges and universities for graduating students and increasing their economic mobility. The strength of Chicago State University is our ability to support students who are underrepresented in higher education, and also to give them the opportunity and the support that they need to excel through college and well into their careers. One of our PBI grants has supported our transfer initiative across campus. Our president recently signed an MOU, and so we've been doing our own work with the City Colleges of Chicago to strengthen our transfer pathways program. But this PBI grant has led to increased attention, staff, and support for our students. And so with that overhaul of the transfer experience since 2020, hundreds of our students have been taking advantage of the institutional supports that we provided through that PBI grant, and it's definitely positively impacted their student experience. It's also increased retention for this student group, with the career and academic goals being set in sessions with the Pathway staff and their coaches being coordinated by that staff, that work has continued to make all the difference for that student group. Another example of academic achievement because of MSI funds is actually at Trinity Washington University, which is right here in Washington, D.C., the only PBI here in D.C. It also was an HSI, and 2 major grants through the PBI program of the U.S. Department of Education actually made it possible for Trinity to transform laboratories and technologies for STEM and nursing programs in ways that led to larger enrollments, persistence, and completion of Black students, and significant outcomes, including a 100% NCLEX, which is the nurse licensure exam, first-time pass rate recently in spring of 2023. Trinity Washington University's success in nursing made it possible by the PBI program's modernization of the instructional environment and faculty development. Actually also led to a private benefactor, their increase of support substantially, that now provides scholarships for over 160 nursing students at Trinity Washington University with a $2 million annual gift. So the smart investment from those MSI dollars has led to a gift of that size for Trinity Washington University. So where does this work stand today? In September, the formula grants for PBIs and other minority-serving institutions were discontinued and reallocated, as you mentioned. Across the country, approximately 40 grants of an annual appropriation of $22.4 million were cut short midway through a PBI grant cycle. PBIs stand steadfast in our commitment to serving all of our students, yet the discontinuation of these grants impacts the resources and the supports that our students can have access to. So I thank this body and your attention, and you for your attention to the outsized impact of PBIs and MSIs broadly, and just again want to drive home the fact that we do make a difference in terms of the regional economic impact and workforce development needs for our regions and states. Mahalo, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. We've been joined by Senator Jean Shaheen of New Hampshire. Senator Shaheen, we've heard from all of these witnesses. They represent a diverse group of minority-serving institutions and organizations. Basically, the impact of the regime, I call it the regime because of its authoritarianism, they're just saying, okay, we're going to end the support for minority-serving institutions, and some $350 million in the competitive grants will no longer be made available, even if we had continued to fund. So we can certainly start with you if you have any comments or questions that you'd like to ask at this point.
Well, thank you all very much for being here. I'm sorry I missed your testimony. And thank you to Senator Hirono for holding this spotlight forum and pointing out what's happening to so many institutions of higher education across the country because of the cutbacks that this administration is making to the Department of Education. You know, in New Hampshire, we don't have any schools that are formally designated as minority-serving institutions. But what we do have is students from different backgrounds, including from rural areas, from low-income families, who really depend on the support of federal programs, particularly the TRIO program. I'm sure that all of you are familiar with that. But as you know, those programs support minority and underserved students, not only getting into college, but succeeding in college. And that, for so many of those students, is the real challenge, because they provide not just academic counseling, mentorship, career planning, personal development, community building. It really provides a support system for students once they get into higher education. And I heard from one parent in Keene, New Hampshire, which is in the western part of our state, Dr. Keenan knows, President Keenan knows where Keene is, as coming from Salem, which is close to New Hampshire. But he talked about his son Brendan, who's on the autism scale, and he said that because of the TRIO program, that Brendan was able to attend a traditional university. He was able to experience a social network that TRIO helped him establish, and he's now a rising junior. He's going to be able to graduate and be successful because of that TRIO program. And it's very distressing to me that that's one of the areas that the administration has cut from the Department of Education. I had the opportunity to talk to the governor of New Hampshire, who weighed in on this. I weighed in with the Secretary of Education, and the response that I got was really frustrating because it was, well, we cut these programs because the application said you served minority students. I said, because the application asked if we served minority students. And the response was, well, we've been instructed to eliminate all DEI programs. And so even though the application included that request, and that was done under the previous administration, we're cutting these programs. No concern about what the impact was going to be on the students who are going to be affected. Now, I am relieved that the district court for the District of Columbia has issued a preliminary injunction to force the department to ensure that existing grants could continue. But the damage, sadly, is done in so many areas. So let me ask you, President Keenan, I'm going to start with you. If you lead a university with over 50% of students who are first-generation college students, 40% of your students are Pell Grant eligible. Can you talk about the importance of programs like TRIO to ensure that your students can be successful when they get to school?
Yeah, Senator, thank you for your leadership. I think this might have been the first storm we got more snow than New Hampshire, so it's nice to see you and
We
glad you could make
appreciated
it
that.
here. It is a perfect segue in many ways, the TRIO program that started, I believe, all the way back to President Johnson's war on poverty. At Salem State, we're proud. We're in the 50th year of our TRIO program. It is now led by a graduate, an alum of our TRIO program, who went on to get his doctorate, Dr. Kevin Linton. And we would be thrilled to be able to really make that cover the entire school. We have 325 students in the program now. We have 5,000 undergraduate students. That means only 7% of my students are in TRIO. But we know, and we've heard across the board today, that the so-called secret sauce of student success is very intrusive and proactive advising and coaching to making sure the students, the first-gen students, the low-income students, the disabled students, have those supports to make sure that they can be successful at every step of the way. Not waiting until they fail or drop out or fall out, but making sure that they have all those supports along the way. And that's really sort of what TRIO does. In many ways, the money that we would be able to get, now that we've qualified to be an HSI, would enable us to scale that, to build capacity, to offer that to many more of the 325 TRIO students on my campus that deserve that same opportunity that we're talking about. They're very similar students, right? They're Pell students. They're just so happen to be Hispanic in my situation at Salem State. But the distinction was made earlier about admissions versus enrollment. We are very much an open enrollment school. We're not really recruiting as much as serving an area. Massachusetts is proud to have many of the show horses of higher education, right? I call the public institutions the workhorses. We're the ones that really serve the region, and we're the students that stay and serve the economy. And so it's critically important, I think, again, across all of our institutions, to make sure that students, every student, has a chance to succeed. And I guess that would be the last thing I would say regarding HSIs. It's not just going to support the Hispanic students on my campus. It's going to support every student and our ability to build that capacity to have a TRIO program for everybody on my campus.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And as a graduate of a public college and graduate program of a public university, I appreciate the role that our public institutions play, because that's how we educate the majority of the people who get secondary education in this country. So thank you all very much. Professor Nguyen, TRIO programs are aimed at supporting first-generation post-secondary students, but they also indirectly support MSIs as well. So can you talk about the benefit that you've seen from the TRIO program?
Yes, thank you so much for the question, Senator. TRIO programs are really vital to MSIs and really the entire higher education sector, right? These are unique programs that support students at different stages across their academic journey, and I really can't emphasize enough how critical they are in supporting first-generation low-income students. The relationship between TRIO and MSI is interconnected and mutually beneficial. They are both powerful federal tools that can uplift communities, support students in their education, and ensure that they can reach their fullest potential. And at some MSIs, you can find that the TRIO and MSI programs are housed under the same administrative unit. There's practical reasons for this, but it's also because they really enhance one another, right? There are collaborations. And in doing so, the campus is able to stretch and maximize every federal dollar to make sure that they are serving students effectively. There are many points of intersection. They are certainly highly complementary, and when working together, they benefit students.
Has anybody got any data, or is there research available that shows the difference that not just TRIO but other programs make in terms of the number of students that not only are able to go to higher education, but then actually are successful and able to graduate? And is that data that we can share with folks? Do any of you have that correlation between what the benefit of those programs and what you see? I know anecdotally, and I've seen firsthand the impact that it makes, but to have research about it and data, I think would be helpful as well.
Yeah, I can speak to that, and thank you so much, Senator, for your championship of TRIO programs. You know, in terms of TRIO student support services, we know that they boost undergraduate student retention and graduation more broadly, right? So with these students, we find that they're 47% more likely to complete a 2-year degree or transfer, and 18% more likely to also complete a bachelor's degree than any other matched comparison group of participants. This was done by the Department of Education's own evaluation back in 2019. So we have that data. We know the impact.
So during the first Trump administration.
That's right. So that data is there. And if we consider the effectiveness of the programs and where we currently are in the current state of the country, there have been about 120, if not more, TRIO programs that have been canceled, right? Mm-hmm. So when we think about the impacts to students, that's about 45,000 students from low-income backgrounds and who are first generation, and the numbers continue to be staggering. So when we're talking about the data is there, it's real, and we know that the impacts are there as well.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, well, I want to start by observing that a lot of the attacks on education by this regime go pretty much, I would say, unnoticed by the general public. Would you agree? You know, that the loan programs are being cut back tremendously. So it's going to become harder for students to access loans. In fact, some graduate programs, if you're in nursing, for example, you may not even be able to access a federal loan program. There's a push to have more of the students go to the private sector to get their loans in order to pursue their education. So there's a lot in the education space. That is why this is my 5th forum to talk about how these attacks on education is going to make it a lot harder for people to get education in our public schools. And this goes for, of course, K-12 as well as our universities. So I make this observation because of the other spotlight forums I've asked the panelists, do you think that we have to do more to mobilize the American people in the dangers that this regime is posing to support for public schools? Do you think there is enough awareness in the American public? And if there is not that kind of awareness, what can we do to raise that awareness and enable people to become much more vocal in their support for public education? Anybody on the panel?
Yes, okay. So Senator, I appreciate that observation. And I know that Much of the conversations have been happening and just the tracking of the attacks on higher education and then also K through 12 have been happening in the higher education space. But I do agree with you that we need more visibility and we do need to work in partnership with each other. And that's why many of our MSI programs are already working in coalition with each other to make visible what the impacts are of the federal attacks and what the consequences are on our students, our institutions, and our communities. And I am going to invite Joanne to also add to my comments because I'd like for you to maybe share a little bit about the narrative campaign and narrative change campaign that our coalition organizations are doing under the NCAPA umbrella. I know for APAHI, we are in a Defend Higher Education campaign with AAPI data, with OCA National, and also with LEAP, other organizations within the NCAPA to make visible, through different types of communication collateral, and also really inspire the younger generation to get educated and be aware, and really practice those civic agency skills that they do learn across our higher ed institutions.
Joanne, did you want to add something?
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Rowena. I mean, within our coalition, we do represent, as I shared earlier, 46 national ANHPI organizations across the country. And so when we're thinking about, raising awareness, educating, informing members of our community as well as others, to Rowena's point, there are 4 main core messages that we're finding resonates with folks and that we're continuing to build upon, especially across our 8 key issue areas for our coalition. And that ranges from civil rights, education, health, immigration, housing, economic justice, data equity, and others. And those 4 pillars are focused on affordability, belonging, equal opportunity, and freedom and democracy. Right? So as we're developing content, we're making social media pushes, we're trying to galvanize folks to become more aware of what's happening. We're really trying to provide those resources and information within those 4 core messages.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would proudly add, not only today am I down here speaking with both of you, today is Advocacy Day at the Massachusetts State House, and we have several of our students up there talking about this very issue, trying to, as I said, HSI is, I don't want to say new in Massachusetts, but it's newer than many of the other areas in the country where this has been for a long time. So we're not only proud to be an HSI, we're proud to call ourselves the Commonwealth Civic Engagement University. And part of that means being, you don't have to run for office, although our lieutenant governor is a Viking, but you do have to be engaged, and you have to be an engaged citizen, and that means having the tools to be able to go up to the State House and talk about the importance of funding for these types of programs at the state level as well. So absolutely agree with you, and our students are living that today.
Dr. Nguyen?
Thank you, Senator Hirono. Just to answer your question again, I would agree with my colleagues and only add that part of the reason why the PBI coalition was formed in 2020 was to get at, the crux of your question. Public awareness is incredibly important to the work that we all do, and it's essential for our coalition to continue to meet with senators, members of the U.S. House as well, to educate leaders on simply sort of my experience anecdotally is sort of the difference between predominantly Black institutions and historically Black institutions seems to be something that isn't quite as obvious to folks, and just educating them on our designation federally has been, I think, a large part of the work that we've done, and certainly the impact of our institutions across the nation is something that we're continuing to share in very structured messages with staff and with leaders here in DC. So we thank you for your leadership here.
I think that the thing is that I think there is public awareness on the importance of healthcare, for example, as being a foundational. If you can't afford healthcare, if you have no access, that's pretty fundamental. And then there's a lot of attention on ICE now, and and what we're seeing in Minneapolis. So there's a lot of awareness. But what I don't see, I mean, how foundational, as you say, President Keenan, how foundational is education? It's foundational. I speak from personal experience. I come here, I don't even speak or read English, all of that. And yet, I don't see support for education as being in the top of the awareness of the need to support it. And that's why I asked all the panel members, what can we all be doing to raise the awareness so that people start talking about how important it is to support public education. And so I hope that all of you already are using your social media platforms to alert the community, and the awareness part, I think, is quite the challenge, because I really do not see support for public schools as being a major part of people's awareness. They just expect that it's going to be there. I've never seen the kind of overt challenge to public education as I have seen from this regime. They literally want to get rid of all support, federal support for public schools. So there should be, in my view, a sense of urgency about what is happening. And were it not for the fact that there are lawsuits that are counter lawsuits that are filed, they would very happily, this regime would very happily go about cutting funds, doing all the things that they've been doing, all under the rubric of they want to end discrimination, which is basically BS. So I know that we have one of the virtual people. They represent that they are in the court to fight the administration's efforts, the regime's efforts to totally cut the funding for MSIs. I don't know how they will fare, because this regime is using the Supreme Court decision and the Harvard admissions decision for their position. So. You know, Dr. Nguyen, I think that you probably may be the person on the panel who maybe has the most awareness of the legal underpinnings of supporting MSIs, and maybe you could just weigh in a little bit more on how you think the court challenge or the support for MSIs will fare in court.
Yeah, thank you, Senator, for that question. Let me just start off also in answering that. Let me start off just by saying that what the administration is doing is they're conflating these two very distinct concepts, right? They're conflating a very narrowly tailored Supreme Court decision about admissions with congressionally established criteria to determine if an institution meets eligibility to become an MSI. So even their unit of analysis is incorrect, right? The court's decision is about students, and MSI enrollment is about, MSIs are about at the institutional level. So when the institution is arguing that MSI funding is based off racial quotas, they're just plainly incorrect, right? Federal funding for MSIs is not based on any admissions practices. In fact, and not based off any racial quota. In fact, with the Supreme Court's Bakke decision in the 70s, right, no college is using racial quotas today, right? And as we've been talking about, MSIs are open access and broad access institutions. They admit the vast majority of all their students, right? So a couple things. One is, quite frankly, what they're doing now constitutionally is their unilateral decision is they can't just make these decisions on their own, right? Particularly because these are congressionally established programs. The courts have not weighed in on this, not yet at least. And so instead, it's the administration's job to faithfully administer these MSI programs as Congress has intended.
Well, that may be so, but that's an argument that you and I can agree on. But obviously, this administration regime doesn't buy it. In fact, the Attorney General's office has said that that they can do what they're doing, which is to end support for these programs. And I understand that those are the grants that have already been given out. I think it's going to be really hard for the regime to say, well, you have to claw back those grants. But then it's going forward. And I think that one of the arguments is that going forward, since nobody's entitled to these grants, these are competitive grants, right? And since nobody's entitled to these grants, you do not have standing to challenge the end of a program that provides grants which haven't, that you are not necessarily entitled to. So, you know, I don't think it's a slam dunk at all that that the argument that I would agree with you on will prevail in court. And so at the same time, I think that listening to all of you, it is really important that these kinds of programs continue. And I'd like to put out there, you know, as I think about it, as I listen to all of you and the importance of these programs and the fact that they basically enable first-generation college people, and I am one of them. I'm the first in my family to go to college, but lower income families to be able to access higher education, which really results in an ability to get jobs, and it's going to have an economic impact. And that impact, I would say, enables us to enter the middle class. So as I thought about it, what are some of the major national laws that have enabled basically the creation of the middle class in our country? One is the GI Bill. Suddenly you had all of these veterans come back from fighting in World War II, and there was a GI Bill. And so now they could go to college. So many, if you read about the people who attended colleges like Harvard and some of those institutions, and suddenly all these veterans were applying, which they never could have even afforded. So that created an opportunity for a major middle class. In fact, in the state of Hawaii, both the Senator Spark Matsunaga and Daniel Inouye, well known, they used the GI Bill, having been veterans from World War II, to attend college. The other national legislation that enabled the creation of a middle class is the National Labor Relations Act, which enabled workers to organize. And suddenly they had the power to organize, and then they had more work stability. They were able to organize for better paying jobs, better work conditions, entering the middle class. So when you think about programs like the MSI institutions, what you all represent and what you're advocating for, that could be deemed, from listening to all of you, yet another way for people who otherwise would have difficulty entering the middle class to enter the middle class. What do you think about that, Mr. Dr. Nguyen, because you're the researcher here?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Senator. No, I completely agree with you. What we know historically with the way our higher education system has evolved and grown over time is that federal investment, these stages of federal investment, from the GI Bill to National Labor Relations Act to MSIs to other funding mechanisms through the NSF, has grown our institutions and thus supported so many students in uplifting them into new economic levels. And so these programs are critically important to serve students and to not only support them, but increase their capacities to contribute to our economy. Without a doubt, we've seen that these interventions from the federal government to support higher education has paid back dividends in our national competitiveness and our economy.
I think that writ large, because I realize MSI created under the Higher Education Act, and so maybe we can, I'm trying to think of ways that we can kind of analogize all of these programs as a way for us to strengthen and grow our middle class. And that may be something that people can relate to. Mm-hmm. I am throwing out to you all to see if that may be a way that we can talk about these programs in a way that people can, as I say, relate to, and therefore it will become important to them that they will actually say, hey, we should support education. We should fight back against efforts to totally eliminate federal support for education, which is exactly what's happening right now with the dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education and they're entering into agreements with 5 other departments to dismantle all these programs that are really important. So I would ask you to maybe think about it a little bit as I personally wrestle with how is it that we can do more to mobilize our country into becoming so much more vocal in their support for education. So, meanwhile, I know that we also have some students. Where are the students who are, come on up.
We have some student videos and then in-person students, but these are the introductions for the videos. So we'll play the videos first.
Oh, okay. Apparently, we have some videos from students, and then we also have two students who are here, and you're sitting back there. But let's get to the videos first. Whatever.
Hello, my name is Joshua
These are the
Tran.
videos.
I was born and raised in Sacramento, California.
What?
I'm a first-generation
Okay.
professional and a third-year law student at Duke University.
Sorry.
Before law school, I attended Irvine Valley College and the University of California, Irvine. Both were NAPCs, or
hard to
Asian
hear.
American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institutions. Like many others in the ANHPI community, I
Can
come
you
from an
raise the
immigrant family.
volume? I can't
My
hear.
parents escaped war-torn Vietnam and came to the United States in pursuit of the American dream. The promise of better opportunities for themselves, their parents, and their children.
You may
I was
have
raised to
difficulty
believe that
hearing,
if
but
I
I
worked
know
hard
that we
and
are streaming this, so
excelled
people should
I
be
could build
able
a
to
stable
see
life.
or hear.
But even with that
Video
deeply
live
rooted
stream.
belief, obstacles remain.
Excuse me, where are the students?
Overwhelming financial pressure and a lack of information about how to navigate higher education. Because of these barriers, I chose to attend a community college. The low cost of community college, a Pell Grant,
you.
and an NAPC scholarship from APIA Scholars, a nonprofit organization, helped alleviate the financial burden. Just as important, the NAPCs I attended provided the institutional support that made it possible to not just persist, but to thrive. At Irvine Valley College and UC Irvine, NAPC funding supported culturally relevant programs and spaces focused on AANHPI students. These included mentorship from faculty and staff who understood our cultural and family responsibilities, student organizations and resources that affirmed our identities, and community-based engagement that made campus feel like a place where we were meant to be. These resources were crucial for students like me who were low income or first generation. My experience is backed by national data. NAPCs enroll over 40% of all ANHPI undergraduates, despite accounting for only about 6% of degree-granting institutions in the United States. They confer about 50% of associate degrees and 40% of baccalaureate degrees earned by ANHPI students nationwide. These institutions, many of them community colleges, are doing a disproportionate share of the work to move ANHPI students into and through higher education. Research shows that when NAPC programs are funded, they improve the academic and socioeconomic outcomes for students, including higher retention and degree attainment rates when compared to their non-participating peer institutions. Despite this impact, NAPCs have been historically and severely underfunded since their creation in 2007. An analysis of federal appropriations showed that NAPCs receive the least per-student funding of all minority-serving institutions. As a result, only a small fraction of eligible NAPC campuses have ever received NAPC grants. These institutions are left to meet complex needs with little or no dedicated federal support at all. At the very same time, the need for these institutions is growing. AAPI college enrollment has increased by a third since 2000, and AANHPI students are among the fastest growing groups in the United States higher education. Yet xenophobia and anti-Asian hate continue to rise. Although reported incidents have fallen since the pandemic, the total number of anti-Asian hate incidents remains nearly 3 times higher than pre-pandemic levels. Studies have found that increases in depression and anxiety among AANHPI students directly coincide with racial discrimination. In such an environment, the resources, support, and network that NAPCs provide become all the more crucial to a student's basic sense of safety and belonging in their community. For me, these statistics reflect a deeply personal reality. During my time at NAPC institutions, I graduated at the top of my class and earned an associate, bachelor's, and master's degree within 4 years. The combination of financial support and the availability of NAPC programming made it possible for me to pursue a legal career. Without that support, it is very likely that I would not be where I am today. My story is only one of tens of thousands of other AANHPI students whose paths depend on whether NAPC and other minority-serving institutions continue to be fully funded. Cutting, capping, or eliminating support will mean lost degrees, diminished earnings, and erased potential in our communities nationwide. For the sake of current and future AANHPI students, and by extension, all students of color and low-income students served by minority-serving institutions, I urge you to not only protect but strengthen federal funding for NAPCs and other minority-serving institutions. They are among the most effective tools that Congress has to keep access open to higher education and to keep the American dream alive. Thank you for your time and your continual commitment to this issue.
See, one must be flexible. So, what we're going to do is that was Joshua Tran. He is a student at Duke University Law School, and we have other videos from students. Joshua Tran, that was Joshua. We have Zainada Mirza. She's a student at Northwestern Virginia Community College, and several Pacific Island students who have benefited from the programs that we were talking about. We're going to stream the other two videos and go to the student panel because you are here in person and we want to hear from you. And if you can, I hope that you can have your remarks within a 5-minute time frame because we're running over. And thank you very much for your patience and waiting. So I'd like to introduce Kevin Williams, who is a student at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, and Diana Castro from the University of California at Santa Cruz. So we'll start with you, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Senator Hirono. And
Morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here to share. I'll restart. Good morning, Senator Hirono, and thank you for the opportunity to be here to share my experience as a student who has benefited greatly from funding for minority-serving institutions, and specifically the Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institutions, and a PZ grant at the University of Massachusetts, Boston, UMass Boston. My name is Kevin Williams. I'm a multiracial Khmer American and first-generation college student in my junior year at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. I'm studying information technology. Before I connected with UMass Boston's NPZ program, I was just surviving college. Because of it, I'm finally thriving. And I'm here to ask you to ensure that every student like me gets the same chance. I was born in Lowell, Massachusetts, about an hour north of Boston. My biological father, who was Cambodian, was not a part of my life, so I was raised by my single mother. And life was not easy for us. For the first 2 years, we were homeless, and I lived in different shelters. We moved from Lowell to Maine to Dorchester, trying to find stable ground. By the time I reached high school, I had survived a level of instability that most people could not imagine. And through all of that, I carried a sense of isolation because I was the only Khmer person in my family. My mother is white, and like I mentioned, my biological father is Cambodian, but I never met him. He's never been part of my life, and because of that, I grew up with a missing piece of myself. I looked in the mirror and I saw an Asian face, but I did not have the language, the traditions, or the family stories to go with it. My mother did an incredible job raising me alone, but she could not teach me what it meant to be Khmer. She could not give me that connection. My middle school and high school years were formative times for me because that is where, for the first time, I began finding community with other Asian American peers and students. I spent my afternoons in Chinatown learning how to use chopsticks, drinking boba, and becoming more comfortable with my own Asian American identity. But still, when I looked around, I realized there was no other Khmer students. There were no Cambodian mentors that I could connect with Asian culture broadly, but I still cannot see my own reflection. When it came time to apply to colleges, I struggled to navigate the processes and only applied to one school, which I was denied admission to. So I enrolled in community college instead and hoped to transfer to a university. For a first-generation student like me, community college still felt like a good option. It was affordable and close to home. And even at community college, I continued to feel out of place. Often, I felt like my advisor was too busy to help me, and I didn't have anyone home who had gone through the college experience. And there wasn't anyone on campus who seemed like they cared or needed to notice that I needed support. So I did my best to just try and get through on my own. Then in my last year, I discovered a new program on campus called the NPZ Proud and the resources they have for first-gen low-income students like me. After meeting the NPZ staff, it was the first time I felt like someone on campus was investing in my educational future. They wholeheartedly encouraged me to aim higher and continue my education by transferring to a four-year university. The transfer process is a nightmare for many first-generation students. There's no one to help you through it step by step, navigating applications, the credit evaluations, the financial aid forms, and registrations. I did not know how to do any of it. I felt lost, just like when I was moving from shelter to shelter. But this time, it was different. The Anna Peasy Proud program is a collaboration between Bunker Hill Community College and UMass Boston, and is specifically in place to support low-income, first-gen Asian American students to figure out the transfer process to enroll in UMass Boston and succeed to graduation. This connected me to the Asian American Resource Office, or ARROW, the student support hub of UMass's Anna Peasy program, and one of my mentors, Pano. For the first time in my academic life, I was not just being advised, I was being understood. One of the Anna Peasy staff members, Pano, did not just look at me at my transcript. He looked at my history. He understood the low-income neighborhoods I came from. He understood the challenges of being a first-generation college student. He understood what it meant to be as a Khmer man from Lowell. He represented something I had been searching for. He was proof that someone like me could belong in higher ed. When I talked about growing up in Lowell and Dorchester, he didn't see trauma. He saw resilience. When I talked about my Khmer heritage, he didn't ask me to assimilate. He asked me to bring it into the room. And for the first time, my ethnic heritage, for me, it became a part of me that had felt invisible for so long, was treated as an asset. It was something to build a career on and not just to overcome. So for many students like me, ARROW is more than an office. It is a sanctuary. It is a place on campus where students can explore their identities without judgment. It is where we can ask the hard questions. What does it mean to be Asian American? How do I carry my history? How do I honor my ancestors while navigating a system that wasn't built for them? In ARROW, my experience are not just tolerated, they're celebrated. The staff just don't know my name, they know my story. They understand that for many AAPI students, especially Southeast Asians, their journey to college is not a given. It is a defiance of statistics. It is a victory over intergenerational trauma. But belonging is not just emotional, it is educational. The support that Anna Peasy provides translates directly into academic success. But because I had Pano in the ARROW community, I didn't just survive my transfer process from community college. I thrived. When I was confused about course registration, I had someone to walk me through it. When I faced bureaucratic hurdles with financial aid, I had advocates who understood what I was going through. When I felt like an imposter, they were there to make sure that I felt good. I had a physical space to go to where I could be reminded that I did it, that I transferred. Anna Peasy doesn't just make students feel good, it retains them, it graduates them. It gives them the tools that they can not only earn a degree, but it can envision a future where we can lead. I am proof that when students have culturally responsive support, and when they see themselves in their mentors, when their identity is treated as an asset, they persist and go on to serve their communities. If Anna Peasy programming were to end, the door to ARROW closes. Pano loses his job, the coaches, the mentors, the advocates, they are gone. The loss of Anna Peasy and other MSI programs means thousands of students walking onto campuses across this country with no safe harbor. You have students like me arriving at universities with no mentor who understands their specific history. You have Southeast Asian Americans who are hidden and overlooked by the model minority myth, the false idea that all Asian American students are doing fine, falling through the cracks because no one is looking at them. I am standing here today because I was not on my own. Anna Peasy invested in me. It gave me a mentor who understood my history, gave me a community where my Khmer identity was celebrated as a strength, not something to overcome. If this programming ends, the doors to ARROW close. Thousands of AAPI students will walk onto campuses with a safe harbor, and they'll fall through more cracks. Please protect Anna Peasy and MSI funding. It gave me a future and should be a future that we protect for the students coming behind me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Castro.
So, hello, my name is Diana Castro, and I'm a fourth-year student at the University of California, Santa Cruz. I'm currently studying at the UCDC Washington program, and I'm also a congressional intern in the U.S. House of Representatives. First and foremost, thank you to United States Senator Hirono for the opportunity to advocate for students' access to higher education. As a first-generation Latina woman, college is an important stepping stone in my journey, as my parents did not attain a higher education. Due to my parents' knowledge of college being extremely limited, my university's resources became vital in building my future. In my freshman year of college, I served as a UCSC representative at the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities Conference in Washington, D.C., where we discussed the importance of HSIs. I had conversations with representatives, university staff, and students about the ways funding, grants, and programs have advanced a student's educational success. In my second year of college, I became further involved in the HSI committee at UCSC. I witnessed firsthand how students receive guidance on navigating college, such as understanding financial assistance, learning about future employment opportunities, and gaining access to resources for building resumes, tutoring services, and research opportunities. I am one of the students who have witnessed the impact of these resources and have gained the opportunity to not only receive a college education, but build a career in politics. It is because of these programs and opportunities that I have been able to gain new experiences, further my career, and be here with all of you today. Due to the support and guidance I have received throughout college, I've had the opportunity to become involved in student advocacy groups at UCSC, be a capital intern at the California State Senate, a district intern for the Los Angeles City Council president, and now a congressional intern for a House of Representative. When students like myself feel seen, supported, and heard, we become empowered to learn and push ourselves to further our education. My story is just one out of the many where students have been able to succeed during college and beyond due to these resources. It is our mission to remain committed in advocating for these programs and funding, as all students should have access to an equal education. I am endlessly grateful for the opportunity I had to attend college, soon to be the first in my family to graduate, and for these opportunities, which is why our advocacy is critical for future students' access and success in higher education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So while this hearing is going to adjourn, I want to make sure that we will live stream, or we will stream the video comments from Ms. Zainab Mirza and the EPIC students. We couldn't get to it, but thank you very much. You two do represent the importance of these programs. And clearly, when 5 million students are impacted by the institutions, minority granting institutions, we're talking about a lot of students who are going to be enabled not only to enter college, but I think retention is an issue, isn't it? To be able to help to succeed in college, because if you're the first in your family, or you come from a situation where you need help navigating college, these are the kinds of programs that will help you do that. So entrance, the retention, the graduation, those are all important parts of your student experience and why these programs are important. So I hope that you all are, the two of you are part of an effort to mobilize other students in your situation, and not. You don't have to experience the situation in order to be supportive and to understand. So, Ms. Castro, you are nodding your head, so it sounds like you are an activist in this space. So yes, that's good, and I hope you are too, Mr. Williams. I want to thank everyone for participating, and we'll do the live stream of the videos as we end this this virtual hearing, or this virtual part of the hearing. And mahalo nui loa to each and every one of you, and thank you so much for the time that you spent. But we need to get out there and raise our voices for how important public education is for all of us, lower ed and higher ed. The hearing is adjourned. So, can he do the stream?
We'll add it to the live stream after.
Okay. Okay.